where you find that they look at this.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Good morning and thanks for staying with us. It is now time for the newspaper review and for us to give you in-depth analysis on what is happening in the papers today. And to do this, we have Deputy President, Nigerian Guild of Editors, Ali M. Ali, joining us for more detailed review of today's front pages. Good morning and welcome to
It's good to be here.
Good morning.
Good morning and good to have you.
Yeah, good to be here.
All right, so let's start with the lead story on Daily Trust newspaper on Kaduna attacks and embassies, international organizations, cutting off the Northwest. What's your take on this?
Well, it's not surprising that such organization and embassies, clearly the Northwest as it is now, is, if you like, more or less like the Northeast is the theater of war. What's happening in the Northwest presently is like an island, isolated, and then also ravaged by plethora of crisis. First, there is the insecurity, which has devastated that region. And then there is also crushing poverty, if you like. Most of the dwellers of that sub-region are farmers, and most of them subsistent farmers, because of the raging insecurity there. That's why some experts are predicting a possible famine, because farmers can't go to farm because of insecurity. And now with the international agencies at a time like this, cutting off the Northwest. And the Northwest domicile the most registered voters, domicile the most population. If you take the numerical strength of the population of the Northwest vis-a-vis other regions of the country, then you know that is a terrible thing. So it's understandable if this foreign embassy, international agencies, because they don't feel safe to move from Kaduna, from Abuja to just next door neighbor Kaduna, less than 200 kilometers. Now is perhaps going to, if you like, battlefront. It's a lot easier, perhaps some will say, to navigate the war-ravaged Ukraine than to travel from Kaduna to from Abuja to Kaduna for these reasons I've listed. So it's understandable. Ordinarily, foreign embassies, missions, they give in their routine advisory, security advisory, even in Abuja, they have, in a way, classify Abuja as
classify areas according
precisely
to
classify areas in where is, if you go beyond these areas, you're on your own, literally. In Abuja, it's a 3 concentric cycle. From cycle A to B is safe. From B to C, it's a bit dangerous, but from C upwards. And this is between Asokoro or Asokoro to maybe, I think, up to Bega. Is this about then from then to the national, to the stadium. Well, that's the stadium. That's section A. First cycle from the national stadium to airport. That is cycle B. And then above, from the airport outwards, you are on your own. It's a very dangerous place. And that's why you rarely see foreign mission or foreign embassies having their, rarely you see them outside this, unless they are traveling out of the country. So if the Northwest now totally cut off, don't forget the Northwest is the constituency of the president himself. And we expect that when the president retires from office by 2023, his personal residence is in Kaduna, and then his homestay is Katsina. Already, most of the villages, local government, routinely sacked by bandits. So it's really terrible, and it's not going to be a very flattering legacy.
You made mention that anything above or outside the airport, you're on your own for foreign missions.
Yes.
And then there are attacks, including the latest one in where chairman of Meti Allah was killed in Gwagwalada. How safe is Abuja itself with all these things?
Abuja is like the Northwest. It's just that we're still playing ostrich. Abuja right now is assailed. It's just we don't know when they'll strike. if you notice that this concentric cycle I listed, don't forget late last year when bandits or marauders, I don't know what level you give them, they just walk into University of Abuja, literally carted away. Let me use that like property. Just mooch some lecturers, senior lecturers, kidnap. The following day they return again, and then nothing happened. And you see, the thing is, people often say there is the failure of intelligence. No, I don't think so, because the intelligence community, I know a pretty number of intelligence operative. Sometimes these things, you don't need any special training to know that, look, it's just a matter of time. When something happens once, then you know it's likely to be repeated, especially if there are security breaches. This has happened routinely. They become routine now. People don't, just yesterday that Nigeria was classified ahead of Iraq, the most dangerous place to be. Iraq is war-ravaged, civil war going on there. What about us? And when we say Nigeria is a failed state, people think we're alarmist. But look at it. All the indices of a failed state are manifest in
But why do you think
country.
nothing is actually being done, or we're not seeing, results?
Well, the thing is, the most obvious reason is that there is no political will. That's the most obvious reason. On the surface, that's what I would say. As a citizen who should be protected by government, I would say the political will is simply not there. Why? Because constitutionally speaking, the primary purpose of government is the protection of life and property. Life and property. And you see, that's the primary duty of government. The primary purpose of government, constitutionally speaking, is to protect life and property. And then you see life, property being destroyed. And then nobody takes responsibility. Nobody is being asked to leave their office. Nobody is quitted. Nobody is fired. And then life goes on. Then you know there is no political will. And then when people make excuses, no, we don't. That's why in 2015, the underperforming government under PDP was dislodged by Nigerians because the APC promised in several of their campaign promises that, look, three-pronged promises. First, they're going to improve security, create employment, and then the third one is
corruption.
Fight corruption. And then now the seventh year now, if you put the government, the pledges or the promises, campaign promises, which you look at them, which you index them, then you say, how do you rate them on a scale of 1 to 10? A lot of Nigeria will say it's below average. Because why? For all this reason we've listed. The value of the nation's currency has literally gone haywire. It almost, it's unimaginable. In 2015, the value of the naira, if you look at it, was slightly 3 times as it is now. In 2015, it was 200 to the dollar. But now it's nearly 600 to the dollar. And then that is one. Unemployment has risen because most small-scale industries have shut down because of energy crisis.
Exactly.
Now the cost of energy is horrendous. And then look at the national energy crisis. The national grid, like insecurity, collapses every now and again. And so far, those saddled with the responsibility of some of these promises, they've not actualized it, and they're not being fired.
But sir, you said there is no political will. But every now and then, when there is a major attack, we receive statements from the presidency condemning the attacks and directing the military to go after these attackers, apprehend them, bring this to an end. What mode of political will do you, that we need more than this?
I think there is an editorial by the Daily Trust about presidential directives which have become empty. Because you do that, it's like there's a template. There's an attack, then we just look at the template, we rewrite the date, make it more contemporary, then you release, then you go to sleep. And then people, in the imagination of those who issue such releases, that we live happily ever after. Nobody walks that talk. So, like the Trust editorial observed last week, these are empty presidential directives. We expect that if you are, as an editor now, as an anchor, what we do in newsroom now, you give every other person has certain responsibilities. If you fail to deliver, if you miss a story, there is a punishment. If and you know the routine.
Definitely.
But then people are given certain. What are the key performance indicators? They're not being met, and then the person responsible there, is sitting pretty and making excuses. One of such lame excuses when the train attack happened was that the certain security equipment was not given, money was not given, and that's why that happened. A lot of people describe that as very heartbreaking, that they're actually not in, how can you invest such colossal amount of money on infrastructure and then you fail to police that corridor? And you know pretty well that it was just a matter of time that something on that scale will happen, because the first time it happened on a minor scale, people predicted that someday these people are testing the microphone. It will be a matter of time before they come full scale. And then it came to pass that actually that thing was going to happen. There was intelligence, credible intelligence for an action to happen. You need to have that credible insight for an action to happen. And that was provided. But the authorities somehow were lackadaisical in executing that.
Now, the first time, the train attack, not an attack, the attempted, attack actually
yes,
happened.
The bridge, the first time.
Yes, the first time.
Yeah.
There are helicopters, hovering around every trip. And now, after this particular attack, we have soldiers, policemen taking over Abuja, Kaduna Road, and helicopters hovering. But for how long will this last?
You see, this is the thing. Sometimes, I remember a couple of years ago, one of the that armed robbers, I'm trying to recall the campaign, then they are not spirit. You see them, they are people like you and I. Bandits and criminals, insurgents, they are not spirit. When they do this, that's why you need credible intelligence community. What happening to the nation's intelligence community? One of the most effective you can find on the West African sub-region. The Nigerian intelligence community. It's not as if they're not up and about. Like, for example, you don't need such apparent, obvious, like copters flying, hoovering. It's way too expensive to do that.
But do you think informants actually make it difficult for, the government to act on the intelligence?
You mean informants?
Yes, those who inform the bandits. The bandits.
Yeah, but then that's why the government should have also informants. And this thing is not rocket science. When you discuss security, sometimes one cannot help but be very passionate about it because it involves all of us. You don't know when some of us fly that route. Every now and again, we are compelled to move that. If you are not flying, you must go through that route. And naturally, when you're discussing the several breaches on that route, you become very passionate. Now, if you look at it, yes, the informants, both sides, and you see, when you want to deal with something, this did not happen or did not start yesterday or last week or last year. It has been on for several years. By now, we had expected that the Nigerian intelligence community would have developed a framework to detect crime, infiltrate these organizations, or the insurgents cycle, terrorist cycle, bandit cycle, have their own men there, be part of the group. But clearly, and I'm sure a lot of resources have been devoted. If you look at the national parliament, this debate has been on. That look, all monies, all allocated for security are 100% granted, given. But then what happened? That is the question. What happened? Is it that the Nigerian intelligence community is not up and about, which I doubt very much, or is it that there is a rogue section of it? A rogue section working hand in glove, which some of the bandits in past revelations have revealed that, look, there are people in government who are supporting us. And then let me take you back, way back in history, under PDP. There was a time it couldn't have been a Freudian slip on the part of the former president, Goodluck Jonathan. He said, look, when you're dealing with insurgents, you don't know there are even insurgents in the villa. He said, even Boko Haram, he said so. It's so how dicey it is. When this government came, especially the commander-in-chief, he came in highly rated, being an ex-general who has fought civil war, who has proved his mettle. So it was expected that it was just a matter of time before any security breach maybe not totally banished from the shores of this country, but at least such daring exploit like the train attack wouldn't have happened. And the APC sold this dummy to all of us. Like, we have a battle-tested general who has fought in the Civil War as a young officer who has made name, you know, as very daring, very bold, very brave. And then his record as military head of state, also very sterling record, unassailable. And then you have a deputy, a vice president, who is also a prayer warrior, is from the pulpit, a clergy, a known man of God. So these two gentlemen now, a battle-tested general and a prayerful vice president, who from the clergy, who operating from the pulpit, and also an intellectual, the combination of this would defeat insecurity, would banish insurgency in the land. But what happened 7 years down the road? Normally, often the government defenders will say, look, when we took, and we're tired of this red herring, that when we took over in 2015, several local governments, there's always been their
template.
Precisely, that when we took over, a lot of local government were under the control of insurgents. Late last year, Governor Zulum said, look, up to that moment, there are certain local government under the control of Boko Haram. And then nothing is happening. Of course, the media, we've done what we could beyond that, and some of us have been labeled as unnecessary, probably working for the opposition. Every now and again, you raise any patriotic fear, you express any reservation, then you are labeled. But then, you see, all of us, like we say, all of us, he who wears the shoes, knows where it's pinched, she's the most. So the bottom line is that, yes, there is lack of political will to execute this, or I just read somewhere, this may sound very unkind, but I just read somewhere that an army of lions led by a sheep will be defeated by an army of sheep led by a lion. This is the point I'm saying to say. If you have an absentee political authority, that is not just there. You expect that. And then don't forget also the interagency rivalry, which has not been checked. Before the former service chiefs were sacked, it was so apparent there was lack of coordination between the Air Force and the Nigerian Army.
Well, that's been really, steamy conversation around politics, because it's something that is, as you said, very passionate. We are all passionate about it. But let's move into a more lighter issue of politics, and we move on to the leadership newspapers, which, like many other papers today, reports that the presidential declaration of the Vice President Yomi Oshibanjo. He's throwing his hat in the ring. What do you think that now that the Vice President has actually, as of this morning, released a video in which he's officially announcing his declaration to contest the next election? What do you make of it?
Well, you expect that a number two will want to be number one. So it's a natural progression of aspiration. When you are number two, deputy general editor, one day you want to be the editor general. This is a natural thing. And I think it's welcome. The more, the merrier. And he wouldn't have done that if there was no consultation with his boss. Really. And you see in the last 7 years, Osibanjo has been a very loyal deputy. Notwithstanding, of course, in any court, especially a presidential one for that, you know there will be a lot of jostling for power. People want to access power or even annex power. So we saw a lot of people saw it coming, that it was just a matter of time before the vice president throws his hat into the ring. A couple of weeks ago, a month ago, the BBC did an extensive story about emerging billboard in Abuja and elsewhere, which the office of the vice president expectedly denied that it had no knowledge of that. But we know that if it walks like a dog, quacks like a dog, it's a dog. So it was just a matter of time that we know the vice president would throw in his hat into the ring. So it's welcome, the more the merrier. But also this presidential aspiration has thrown up a lot of scenarios, one of which is the imminent clash between him and his political, whether we admit it or not, mentor or even godfather, Bola Tinubu. And Bola Tinubu has made no bones about his blinding ambition to be #1 president, and that he admitted himself that it's a lifelong ambition. How that is going to pan out, especially in the Southwest, is going to be an interesting battle. But like I said, I see Osibanjo wouldn't have taken this very calculated risks without the blessing of his boss. So yes, it's welcome, and I think Osibanjo perhaps is about the right man for the job if you want continuity.
But those Nigerians want continuity.
Yeah, that's the question. It's up to Nigerians because Nigerians, when they sought for change 7 years ago, in 2015, they said they didn't want continuity. Yeah. Because the continuity that would have meant, but the underperformance of the PDP at the time. And that's why, and then APC cashed in on the weaknesses of the PDP. But 7 years down the road, I see also APC treating the part of PDP in more ways than one. APC, PDP, some pundits have said there are two sides of the same coin. They are the same Nigerians, the same political environment. Perhaps the only change, the difference was before 2015, the cast iron reputation of Buhari, President Buhari. Buhari, more than any element, was the change in the APC. The APC, don't forget, is an amalgam of so many political leanings, which is the same way that PDP was. PDP in 1998, when it came into business, when it opened shop to wrestle power from the departing military, was conceived as a behemoth, an umbrella body, and that's why the umbrella, left-wing and right-wing element, even middle-of-the-road kind of elements coalesced into the PDP. If you remember, there were left-wingers, progressives, the likes of Abubakar Rimi Solomon La, the pioneer chairman, and then you have ultra-right wingers like late Ademuchu Roma coming together to form the PDP. And the express intention was to chase out the military, to keep the military in barrack, in check. And the PDP did that admirably well. For the first 7-8 years, under another retired military, the PDP actually, and till this day, it provided some form of stability, and the idea of a military takeover completely banished from the thought process of most people who are given to that kind of change of government. Now, the APC came also when at a point the PDP became the military actually. Lack of internal democracy, I've always said that. The PDP became a problem. No internal democracy, but then the PDP, even then under Obasanjo, had a way of resolving internal crisis. The internal conflict resolution mechanism of the PDP was superb. Every now and again when there is any rebellion, they've had a way of dealing with that and then accommodating various interests and turning it into a family affair. Unfortunately, the APC does not have that mechanism. APC, regrettably, I must say this, unlike the PDP, under PDP, there was one single national leader, the president. Under PDP, under APC, the president is different and the national leader is different. What does that make? Because there is, you will say, shared, and then if there is crisis, people go to the national leader, and that's the perception out there. Including myself.
Coming back to the vice president's declaration, would we say, looking at the other persons who have already declared, how bright are his chances? Or dim? Let me. How dim or how bright?
Well, you see, his chances are very bright if you look at, depending on what mantra they're going to fly with. And that is it continuity? Are you going to? If it's continuity, then you know that yes. But then you see, like I said, in any court, there are also elements who are antagonistic to the vice president. And there has been this silent tussle for power among elements surrounding the president and the vice president. And this tussle, it has happened before. Notwithstanding the trust the vice president probably enjoys from his principal. And if you recall, instances where he has handed over, transmitted, officially handed over responsibilities to him when he went on either medical vacation, and so many instances where he has represented the president, especially between the period of 2015 to 2019.
And in that case, some people actually, I don't know if you agree with them, but some people actually seem to think the vice president will do a better job if he's in power, saying that he was actually muzzled, or he's being muzzled as the vice president.
Yeah, well, for so many reasons, perhaps. First, age is on his side. And then he's more contemporary, being a lawyer. Or like the president, whether we admit it or not, the president, well, some people will say he saw yesterday. Let me use the language of young people now. You understand? Compared to the vice president. But it has worked very well for the two, for the twosome, for the duo. You know, you need the wisdom of the old and the energy of the young to have a government that would almost, elsewhere, you've seen about the chances of the president. I've seen several instances in other climes where the number two succeeded number one. Joe Biden is an example. But in the case of Joe Biden and Obama, though there was a 4-year gap, it's kind of a bit different because Obama was younger, he was the president, and Biden was way older than him. But in this instance, the president is way older than the vice president. But then it has worked out perfectly well for the Americans. Elsewhere, Thabo Mbeki succeeded a much older, what's his name again? This late great African.
Yeah, Mandela.
Mandela. He succeeded Mandela. And Mandela served only one term, just in recognition of his age at the time. And I've seen so many at the even micro level, there are deputies who succeeded governors. But whether it has worked out in the final analysis, Kano is an example. Before then, Zamfara also as an example, Shinkafi succeeded Yerima Bakura. But then eventually they fell out, just like what has happened in Kano. So yes, the vice president has an advantage. If on a 100-meter dash, he's already 30 meters or 20 meters ahead. He knows the workings of government, and he knows how, well, if you like, whatever project started or whatever problem there are in the government. So continuity, if he runs with continuity, and there are people, but then, like you said, there are other people, also other elements, keenly interested in the number one spot, and they have expressed their interest. Minister of Transport is there, the national leader of APC, who has most people see as the one waiting in the wings to get the party primaries, because he has been working assiduously for this one moment. And then probably without the national leaders' input in 2015, Buhari wouldn't have been president. We must give that credit to him. It was him who actually nominated the current vice president. Okay. So how this is going to pan out, like I said, in a 100-meter dash, the vice president is already 30 meters ahead of the competition. So, but how he manages the politics. Really, I agree with you totally that, yes, he will bring some vigor once he takes over in running the affairs of government. But then the politics, I don't think the politics will give him that leverage.
Well, that's exactly where I was coming to, but we'll come back to it after a short break.
Thank you.
Where you find that they must look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
welcome back. In case you're just tuning in, you're watching Daybreak on Trust TV, and we still have Deputy President, Nigerian Guild of Editors, Ali M. Ali, right here on the newspaper review. We'll move on to the Nation newspaper, and first of all, let's talk about we're talking about the cost of governance. A story on the Nation newspaper says 37 billion naira National Assembly renovation begins, and contractors have already been mobilized.
Well, I think I always say that the National Assembly, some people will say, yeah, it has been a money guzzler, from the structure to the actual running of the place. The structure itself is so bogus, one of the most intimidating, if you like, one of the most alluring structure housing a national parliament, worldwide. Worldwide. I'm not just talking of Africa, worldwide. So it's very imposing. And that amount is certainly colossal. And then I remember instance where one video that went viral, the leaky roof in the National Assembly. And so people say it's very unbefitting. But you see, when you are making, especially given our dire stress, because Nigeria is broke. That's the news. Nigeria is broke, struggling, gasping for breath. And the loans we've taken, whether we've not exceeded that margin of external borrowing or not. Like some argue that Nigeria's problem is not so much that of revenue. When we don't have, it's not so much that of, there's a technical term, it's revenue problem, so when you don't earn enough and then you are spending so much, you're going to have a problem. But that budget, really, some people say, look, it's way, way too high. But then the flip side is that how much is been budgeted, for example, to maintain the presidential villa? The presidential villa is another country itself. Elsewhere, more developed societies, except for perhaps the White House, 10 Downing Street, until Tony Blair, it was a 2-bedroom affair. 10 Downing Street, where the Prime Minister of Britain lives. It's just a 2-bedroom affair. You understand? Until Tony Blair, he expanded the big house, and they say he had a large family. He had 3 kids also. That was quite a large family by their standards. But here you have a presidential, you don't know how much is being budgeted on the executive arm of government. And this is the counter-argument to that. When people kick against this large amount of money just to renovate, when the National Assembly was erected so many years ago, when it was built, well, the nation's currency then was a lot stronger vis-a-vis the dollar. But now, fast forward. But then, if you look at it, if you scrutinize that budget, just like if you scrutinize any other budget anywhere else, then you find that probably it's hyper inflated. You understand? Because Nigeria's contract is the most expensive in the world. This has been, it's in the public domain. At a point, United Nations,
the
World Bank said Nigeria rail kilometer charge, 1 kilo, is the most expensive in the world. So, you know, Nigeria, normally contracts are more often than not a bazaar for party stalwarts, for favored ones. A quick way, just the same way when we run our parallel exchange market. It's for the favored ones. And that's why people have raised this alarm, especially the likes of economic wizards, if you like, experts like Sunusi, like Mido Sunusi. He has always maintained that when you run a parallel market, what to have is the rent economy. People go, just you are given at the appropriate official exchange, and then you go to the black market and putting a lot of pressure on the nation's currency. And then it has been on a free fall nowhere in the world. Before Britain exited from the
European Union.
Before it exited, there was a time, and that's why Britain opposed the idea of euro, to save the pounds. It spent a lot of money to protect the pound, and exited because it realized that on EU, the euro, because Germany is the leading production house in the whole of Europe, it's going to affect the British pound, and it exited. Well, we see what happened when
but beyond the issue of inflation of contract, there's also the politics, or should I say policy of it. That is, even for the sake of optics, for the sake of PR, how is it a priority? Pushing 37 billion naira
At a time like
at a
this.
time like this to renovate the National Assembly structure?
I think it's ill-advised, like you said, even for PR, it's ill-advised at a time like this. It's ill-advised. You know why? This is my own position. When people say the cost of government is horrendous, and I've always said that, elsewhere, legislation is part-time business. Even America, where we copy this presidential system in total, you see, but in America, legislation is part-time. It's part-time. And you don't have, the American legislators, either senators or those in the Congress, do not have the latitude, do not have the luxury the Nigerian legislators enjoy. But then, if opinions like this would may be seen or misperceived as being critical of the National Assembly or the legislature of government, especially after the years of military rule. Normally, under military rule, that's why it's a dictatorship. The executive also double as the legislature. And that's why you have the Armed Forces Ruling Council or the Supreme Military Council also double is the executive arm as well as the legislative arm. So effectively sidelining and that's why the Nigeria's legislative arm of government has not grown the way it should have grown. And that's why perhaps when they have this freedom, the first time when we have this continuous democracy for 22 years now or 21 years, the legislature is still trying to find its feet. And that's why this the cost of running the legislature. Look at the sweetness they enjoy. What I mean, sweetness, constituency projects, all kinds of allowances.
Just before we move on to the next paper, the controversial clause 84, subsection 12. Now, the appeal court has actually stopped Malami, and the PDP has actually gotten the nod to appeal Umahia ruling. What do you think about this?
Well, I think we will expect, if it's implemented to the latter, we see a lot of upsets. A lot of permutations will change now, because that section, which has been very vexatious, which has caused a lot of uproar for and against. With this latest position, we see a lot of things happening. A lot of people may not be eligible to run if they're in violation of that section. All those who have declared so far, unless they go immediately, I think the window has not been closed.
Yeah, it's not yet there, but it means that people will have to retire.
They have to resign. And it's only fair. It's only fair for people to resign from public office because they already have an undue advantage. Way back in 1983, Abubakar Rimi, the late governor of Kano, when he changed parties from the PRP, moved to another party, he resigned from office 6 months before the time and ran on another platform. I don't know the provision in the 1979 Constitution then, but that is the moral thing to do. You resign from office, otherwise you are already having an undue advantage, especially if you are occupying executive position. When you're appointed, it's a different thing altogether. All the reason, even if you're appointed, you should. But you see, under even the Electoral Act, if you are elected, you still remain in office, you contest for the second time. But if you are appointed, you are minister, commissioner, chief executive of a parastatal ministry, MDAs, the moral thing is for you to resign and then face as an ordinary person. But then if you are a serving minister, for example, 30 days, this constitution says 30 days before, but then you can't be a delegate either to be elected or to be to vote for. That's the provision. That's the import of Electoral Act 84 subsection 12. That's the import. But constitutionally speaking, the Constitution says you resign 30 days before the time. But in the 1979 Constitution, I'm trying to remember because late Abubakar Rimi resigned 6 months before the time. And that's why somebody who has never faced the electorate became governor in Kano. He was first appointed as deputy governor after the first deputy governor was, was impeached. Impeached. He became deputy governor by default. And then by default again became the governor when Rimi resigned from office to contest on another platform. So I think it's the moral thing to do, really.
Well, let's move on to the Nigerian Tribune. And it has many stories here, but there is one that catches my attention that says NDLA intercepts 101 parcels of cocaine in children duvet at Lagos Airport, seizes drugged beverage in Edo. And there's another story saying zoning why PDP is in dilemma. So let's look at this NDLEA story. This has been a recurrent issue, and I think they have perhaps a new media strategy in which almost every weekend they release information about these seizures. What do you make of this unending drug fight?
Well, I think it's a good thing that the NDLEA suddenly is in the public arena, dishing out information. It's a good thing, but then sometimes also it's counterproductive. Sometimes when you have too much publicity, but you know that there is a new sheriff in town, and that sheriff, like we all know, given his history as a public administrator, as governor of Lagos State and Borno State, is someone who revels in publicity, in media bliss. Marwan loves the media. He likes to be in the media. So it's understandable if he's making such. And Nigeria traditionally has been a transit route. Some of these import of some of these substances banned, illegal worldwide, but they're money spinners. Nigeria is a transit route. So it's not just enough when they make such, like this latest catch now. in children's duvet. That's quite ingenious. We've seen even drugs being smuggled or exported inserted in yam tubers.
In meat as well.
In meat. All manner of unbelievable...
They keep evolving
new
strategies.
strategies. So it shows that, yes, what happened in the past when we didn't know about this? Was it that before Marwa came, such things happened, they were not reported, or simply there were no catches because there were cover-ups, conspiracy? And I would like to believe in this theory I just propounded now, that in the past such things were happening, but because there is some kind of conspiracy, they were covered, or some people somewhere are benefiting from the transit. It's possible. That is very, very possible. And like people say, and I've seen this expressed beyond the shores of Nigeria, you see views from abroad. You see people expressing that in Nigeria, anything goes, anything from the point of entry to the point of exit. There are officials who are corrupt in all the agencies, immigration, the custom, the NDLA, with the appropriate greasing of the palm. Let me use what we say here. If you grease my palm, things will happen. So I think NDLA is doing a commendable job, and I think Marwa has risen the banner. Whoever takes over from him will have a tough time meeting up with some of his exploits. And look at some of the exploits. Who would have thought that what happened with this celebrated Super Cup now, who is caught in the snare of NDLA, who is now somewhere languishing in Kuje. So who would have thought that such things were happening? And it must have been going on for years without Nigerians knowing. So it really is good beyond the arrest. Also, there should be immediate prosecution and possibly naming and shaming of those who are in connivance with some of these couriers. Some of these people who courier some of this, and they're actually just an insignificant part of the whole process.
All right.
The big fishes are somewhere.
Thank you so much. We actually wish we could continue, but then time is not on our side. Thank you so much, Ali M. Ali, Deputy President, Nigerian Guild of Editors, for gracing us with your presence.
Thank you for having me.